speaker is from the RMT union, the union that has stood steadfastly alongside Stop the War. Solidarity for the industrial struggle that's engaged in the continued campaign for fair pay, fair working conditions. Please welcome Alex Gordon, President of the RMT.
Thank you, Alex. And look, for Brian's benefit, I've worn a stylish shirt.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit crushed. I'm a little bit crushed that Shelley hasn't complimented my hair. Seems to have complimented everyone else. The trouble with speaking at a plenary session at the end is that people have probably said everything that you're going to say. So I apologise if I'm going over familiar territory here. And a number of the comments I was going to make have been covered by Claudia, but I'm going to make them anyway. So, just to say, first of all, I'm very pleased to be here at Stop the War AGM. My union is affiliated to the Stop the War Coalition. We've been affiliated to the Stop the War Coalition since its inception, and we will be continuing to affiliate to Stop the War Coalition. I think the reasons for that are pretty obvious at the moment, but they need to be stated, because recently Andrew Fisher, columnist at the I newspaper, who says he attended the founding meeting of the Stop the War Coalition in 2001, has called for Stop the War to disband. According to Fisher, Stop the War Coalition, formed in response to Tony Blair and George W. Bush declaring the war on terror, should have ended when UK troops withdrew from Afghanistan, which was in August 2021. At that point, to quote Fisher, the war on terror as we knew it was over. This will come, no doubt, as a considerable surprise to thousands of villagers this week, suffering the consequences of disastrous floods and a national infrastructure decimated by the NATO-led military intervention in 2011, which overthrew Muammar Gaddafi and substituted foreign-backed warlords who have dragged their country into a hell of migrant slave camps and destroyed the ability of their state to respond to this latest climate change disaster. I was also at the founding conference of the Stop the War Coalition in 2001, and my union, RMT, was one of those that affiliated, as I said earlier on, to Stop the War. Bob Crow, our former General Secretary, marched at the front of the Great Demonstration in 2003 and many other demonstrations that preceded that, identified himself and our union clearly with the anti-war cause, with the peace cause, at some personal risk on occasions, spoke in Hyde Park from the Stop the War stage, and indeed I was a member of the Stop the War Steering Committee in its early days, representing my union. And as a union, I need to say this, we have a direct interest in stopping wars. For all the reasons that all the rest of you do, plus some others. We organise workers employed in the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. These are civilian workers, seafarers, who are sent into war zones as logistics supply for the Royal Navy. We represent workers who are sent into theatres of war. We have a responsibility to campaign for a peaceful world. Now, my recollection of the founding of the Stop the War Coalition is different from Fisher's. As I recall, in 2001, we had already lived through more than a decade of constant wars and foreign military interventions by US and NATO powers around the world. To name a few, in 1989 in Panama, in 1991 Operation Desert Storm in Iraq in response to the invasion of Kuwait by the Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, who the US had armed to fight Iran 10 years earlier. In 1993 in Somalia, the Battle of Mogadishu. In 1994 in the former Yugoslavia. in 1996 in the Central African Republic, in 1997 in Congo, Gabon and Sierra Leone, in 1998 in Kenya and Tanzania, in 1999 in Kosovo and Serbia. And, by the way, notice how many of those interventions were in African countries. I agree with Claudia Webb. We must, and Stop the War as a movement, must oppose any intervention by the US or ECOWAS on its behalf in Niger. And we should be associating ourselves with the Nigerian students, the small number of Nigerian students who've been demonstrating in London, outside the French embassy and also outside their own embassy. We need to be inviting these people onto Stop the War platforms. This is where the war. But all of these military interventions preceded the 2001 to 2021 war in Afghanistan, the so-called War on Terror, which began with Operation Enduring Freedom. None of them were justified with the neocon slogan, War on Terror, which came later. They were justified, as I recall, as part of a policy called liberal humanitarian interventionism, which in every case proved to be a hollow justification for imperialist interests of the Western powers. And that is the same justification, with a few updates and tweaks, which is being used today to justify the ramping up of war fever, to increase arms supplies, including cruise missiles, and depleted Iranian tank rounds, and deploy British military in Ukraine. So Fisher's justification in his recent article for calling for the winding up of Stop the War is a red herring. We don't need to base our analysis on what was an entirely misleading historical slogan, the War on Terror, coined by neocons to suit the political requirements of US Republican politics in 2001. It should be noted that the neocons have proved themselves to be extremely adaptable, able to serve both Republican and Democrat administrations. Victoria Nuland switched almost seamlessly from serving as US ambassador to NATO under George W. Bush to Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs under Barack Obama, in which role she orchestrated the coup in Ukraine, and under Hillary Clinton and now Joe Biden as Deputy Secretary of State. Bombing is bipartisan in US politics. The question that Fisher doesn't ask and can't answer is what those who stand for peace and against war should say or do in respect of the role of our own government to oppose the slaughter in Ukraine and the ramping up of hostilities with China. RMT's position is clear and was stated in the days following the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. We said RMT condemned the invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces and calls for their immediate withdrawal. We will do all we can to support humanitarian assistance for displaced people and all those who need it. We welcome refugees seeking to come to the UK, and not only from Ukraine, but from all conflicts. As trade unionists, we oppose war and support peace and cross-border solidarity between workers, and alongside the global trade union movement, we call for a long-lasting, negotiated solution through diplomacy and demilitarisation that guarantees security and peace in the region. Unfortunately, the recent TUC conference decision on solidarity with Ukraine does not take us forward in calling on our government to promote a negotiated peace settlement, which must involve an immediate ceasefire and peace negotiations. This year is the 50th anniversary of the Paris Peace Accords, signed on January the 27th, 1973, to establish peace in Vietnam and end the Vietnam War. We need trade unions and peace campaigners today to call for a peace process in Ukraine. We need to end the reign of chaos and war that in the past 30 years has become the new normal. We need to expose and condemn the neocon political tendency that entrenches permanent warfare into US and UK politics. The demand to stop the war is more relevant today than it has ever been. Keep up the fight, comrades.